Nusa Kambangan. The name itself sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened criminals, a name synonymous with fear and despair. Located off the coast of Java, Indonesia, it was a fortress surrounded by water, a place where hope went to die and dreams were shattered. The island was home to some of the most notorious criminals in the country, convicted of terrorism, drug trafficking, and other heinous crimes that shook the nation. I had heard whispers of Nusa Kambangan for years, stories of its brutal conditions and the iron grip of its guards, tales that seemed almost too horrific to be true. It was a place shrouded in secrecy, a black hole in the Indonesian justice system, where the light of justice rarely penetrated. As a journalist, I was drawn to these stories, compelled to shed light on the darkness that lurked behind its walls, to uncover the hidden truths. My name is Amir, and I had spent my career chasing stories that mattered, stories that exposed injustice and gave a voice to the voiceless, stories that needed to be told. Nusa Kambangan was a story that had to be told, a story that clawed at my conscience and demanded to be heard, a story that could not be ignored. Little did I know that this story would take me on a harrowing journey, one that would test my limits and force me to confront the darkest corners of humanity. A journey that would change me forever. Gaining access to Nusa Kambangan was no easy feat. It was a logistical and bureaucratic nightmare, a labyrinth of permits and approvals that seemed never-ending. But where there's a will, there's a way, or so they say. I was determined to find that way. After months of relentless pursuit, I finally secured permission to visit the prison, a moment of triumph. My cover was that of a researcher studying the Indonesian penal system, a role I had to play convincingly. It was a flimsy disguise, but it was all I had. I hoped it would be enough to get me through the gates.
The guards, hardened and suspicious, eyed Amir with a mixture of contempt and amusement, their gazes piercing. They knew he was an outsider, an intruder in their domain, someone who didn't belong. The air hung heavy with the stench of sweat, urine, and fear as he stepped inside the prison walls, a place of despair. The oppressive heat was suffocating, a physical manifestation of the despair that permeated every inch of the prison, making it hard to breathe.
The guards, armed with batons and rifles, watched Amir's every move, their presence a constant reminder of the danger. Their eyes cold and unforgiving, they were always on high alert.
Amir knew then that he had entered a dangerous game, one that required all his wits and courage. One where the stakes were high and every move could be his last. The consequences of failure were dire, a reality he could not afford to forget.
Over the next few days, I met with prisoners, each with their own tale of despair and hardship, each story more heart-wrenching than the last. There was Baypak, a frail old man convicted of drug possession, who spoke of his longing for his family and the simple pleasures of life outside, like the warmth of the sun and the laughter of children. His eyes, filled with a lifetime of regret and sorrow, haunted me long after our conversation ended. Then there was Reza, a young man accused of political dissent, who spoke of the torture he endured at the hands of the guards, recounting the pain and fear he felt every day. His body bore the scars of his ordeal, a testament to the brutality that was commonplace within these walls, a silent scream for justice. Their stories, whispered through the bars, painted a grim picture of life inside Nusa Kambangan, a place where hope seemed to fade with each passing day. It was a place where human rights were violated with impunity, where the guards ruled with an iron fist, and where hope was a luxury few could afford, a distant dream. I began to piece together a narrative of systemic corruption, brutality, and despair, a story that needed to be told to the world.
Amir's investigation did not go unnoticed. The guards, initially amused by his presence, grew increasingly suspicious of his motives. They began to follow him, their shadows looming large as he moved through the prison corridors.
One evening I was summoned to the warden's office.
The warden, a man of imposing stature and a cold, calculating gaze, sat behind a large desk, his fingers drumming impatiently on its surface.
He spoke of regulations, of the need for discretion, but his eyes told a different story. It was a warning, a thinly veiled threat that Amir was treading on dangerous ground.
Amir had stumbled upon a truth that some would kill to keep hidden, and his pursuit of justice had made him a target.
As the threats escalated, I knew I needed to get my story out to the world. But how? The guards watched my every move, my phone calls were monitored, and my movements were restricted. I was trapped, a rat in a cage.
One day I met Hassan, a prisoner with a haunted look in his eyes. He had been a journalist himself once, before being imprisoned on trumped-up charges. He had seen what I was trying to do, knew the risks I was taking.
Hassan offered a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. He had a plan, a daring and dangerous plan, to escape from Nusa Kambangan. He couldn't guarantee my safety, but he offered me a chance to expose the truth and fight for justice. Hassan's plan was audacious, reliant on timing, cunning, and more than a little luck. It involved exploiting a weakness in the prison security during the daily shift change, a brief window of vulnerability that we could exploit to our advantage.
He had spent months studying the guards' routines, memorizing their movements and identifying blind spots in their surveillance. It was a risky plan, fraught with danger, but it was our only hope.
We gathered what few supplies we could, a makeshift map, some rudimentary tools, and enough water to last us a few days. The plan hinged on stealth and precision. One wrong move, one misstep, and it would all be over.
The thought of failure, of being caught and facing the wrath of the guards, sent chills down my spine. But the thought of exposing the truth, of giving a voice to the voiceless, fueled my determination.
We ran for what felt like an eternity, our bodies pushed to their absolute limits. The jungle swallowed us whole, its dense undergrowth providing cover as we navigated its treacherous terrain. Thorns tore at our clothes, and sweat stung our eyes, but we didn't dare slow down, not with freedom so close at hand.
We finally reached the shore, the waves crashing against the beach like a symphony of hope. A small boat, arranged by Hassan's contacts on the mainland, bobbed gently in the distance. We plunged into the water, the cool embrace of the ocean washing away the fear and exhaustion.
As we motored away from Nusa Kambangan, the island shrinking into the distance, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. We had escaped. We were free. But our ordeal was far from over. We had a story to tell, a story that the world needed to hear.
Reaching the mainland was only half the battle. We were fugitives now, hunted by the Indonesian authorities. We had to disappear, to erase our tracks and blend into the teeming masses of Jakarta.
Hassan, with his network of contacts, proved invaluable. He led us to a safe house, a nondescript apartment in a crowded neighborhood where we could lay low and plan our next move. The weight of what we had done, of the risks we had taken, settled upon us.
The adrenaline that had fueled our escape gave way to exhaustion, and the dawning realization that our fight was far from over. We had to get our story out, to expose the truth about Nusa Kambangan, but doing so would put us in danger's path once more. The authorities would stop at nothing to silence us, to bury the truth beneath layers of bureaucracy and intimidation.
Working tirelessly, we compiled our notes, transforming them into a scathing exposé of the horrors we had witnessed. We wrote of the brutality, the corruption, the systematic abuse of power that festered within the prison walls.
Our story, once published, sent shockwaves through Indonesia and beyond. Human rights organizations condemned the Indonesian government, demanding an investigation into our allegations. The international community watched with bated breath as the Indonesian government, facing mounting pressure, was forced to respond.
They denied everything, of course, dismissing our story as the fabrications of criminals. But the truth, like a seed planted in fertile ground, had a way of taking root and flourishing.
We knew that our fight was far from over. The threats against us remained, lurking in the shadows, a constant reminder of the risks we had taken and the forces we had challenged. But we refused to be silenced.
We continued to speak out, to raise awareness, to fight for the rights of those who had been silenced by the Indonesian government. Our story, once confined to the whispers of prisoners within the walls of Nusa Kambangan, had become a rallying cry for justice, a testament to the power of truth and the courage of those who dared to speak it.
Nusa Kambangan may be an island of dread, a place where hope goes to die, but even in the darkest of places, a single spark of courage can ignite a fire that can never be extinguished. And that, I believe, is a story worth telling.